Welcome back to Lasudo and Travel, Sales 101. Today we're bringing in Scott Bursik, who's a sales engineering manager over at Grafana. Today he's going to discuss what it takes to be a sales engineer, why we love the job so much, what hiring managers are looking for when taking on new candidates, as well as go through his career path and what made him choose to become a sales engineering manager. Welcome to the show, Scott.
Yeah, absolutely. Good seeing you again, Aaron.
I mean, it seems like you've had, a vast array of different positions, different companies. What makes the sales engineering role so special to you?
Yeah, so like I said, I was sitting in a cubicle and I was just bored out of my skull. Writing scripts and stuff all day long to automate processes and things to make it easier for my team, and I just had to get out. So uh, when I discovered sales engineering, I just didn't believe that you get paid for doing this line of work. I mean, it's so dynamic. One in a single day, you might meet with two or three customers, and each one has a different environment with different technologies and different problems to solve, and you've got to adapt your conversation and your presentation to the pain that customer is feeling, because you want to try to solve a problem, because customers just don't buy software to buy software. You have to solve a problem to do it. And it was that
Hmm.
dynamic aspect. I'd be in the car heading to one company, then head to another company, and then COVID hit, and it was Zoom meeting after Zoom meeting, but it was still the same thing. It was still various problems and having to solve different things and having to learn the platform. I mean, there's just a lot to it. Um, but being an A-type personality, like being in front of people and everything at Southwest Airlines, I got in trouble all the time for talking too much, or flying my little toy helicopter over the cubes. And I was bored, and I needed a new challenge, and sales engineering definitely met that challenge.
No, that's, stepping into that kind of role, from where I've been, where I kind of had the same issue too, where I was just kind of bored every day. Stepping into a role where I get to meet these clients. And on top of that, I get to go to Vegas multiple times a year. I get to present in front of people. And the big thing is I go from developing a platform as a software engineer to actually helping people solve their problems. And that's a big aspect of what brings me joy within the position is the opportunity to really help people in their daily lives. So
Yeah,
it's definitely
definitely.
something that works on both ends where you get to give and you get to get.
Especially if you've got experience on the customer side, which is what we call it. You spent time, like I spent time at PepsiCo and Southwest Airlines. You know what those pains are that some of those customers have, and you've worked
Hmm.
with them, you've dealt with it. And so, as a sales engineer, if you've got a background in being a customer, you can empathize with them, and that is just huge. You walk in to have a meeting with a customer, and you say, I get where you've been. You kind of give a little mini resume. And I actually had uh, a meeting with an operations team with the company here in Richardson. And at the end of my introduction, the manager for that operations team said, "Oh, you're one of us." And so, you make that connection with the customer
Yeah.
because you've got that background, and that just buys you so much credibility coming into the conversation.
That's exactly it. I've run my own company. I've been a developer, been in support, and I'd say the most impactful thing I did in my career, which makes me a good sales engineer, is that support role. Not only did
Yep.
I gain the customer side of things when I was developing the platform and working as a software engineer, but once you get into support and you hear the problems that people have, and unfortunately, the company I was working for, they released the product to the customer and it wasn't quite ready. So hearing the backlash and how they're trying to solve the problem but failed to hit the mark, it made a big impact on which companies I choose to work for, and how I actually build out my career from that point because I want to make positive impact rather than just dealing with the problems that maybe people
Absolutely.
made.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, solving problems for a customer is extremely rewarding. You get through the sales process, and you're proving out that your product can solve their problems. And at the end of the day, when they make that purchase and you can see that they're using the product that you're selling to solve the problems that you came in for, it's just an extremely rewarding experience.
Yeah, that's exactly it. Seeing that you've worked both as a sales engineer and a manager, can you describe what the primary role and responsibilities of a sales engineer are?
Yeah, so sales engineer is actually part of the sales team. Um, when you go in and you start your sales process with a customer, and that sales process can start with just, a simple meeting. It can be, a 30-minute, hour-long meeting where you're going in and you're kind of describing what the platform is all about. The sales rep will do a lot of the talking in that beginning part, because he's introducing the product and trying to make sure that they understand what's going on. But when you start to dig in on the tech side and you start getting ready for demos because they want to see how that product looks, what it does, how it could solve the problem, that's where the sales engineer comes in. But the sales engineer and the rep are part of a tight team. You guys are working hand in hand, and often there's been a couple of reps that I've worked with where I've been extremely successful, and we'll sit across from across from each other at a table if we're on site, so that we can see each other's expressions and stuff, because you should get to know your rep that well that you can tell just by the look on his face that he's either struggling with a concept or something that they've asked him, or that, or the other way around. Maybe the customer has asked something of me as an SE and I'm kind of struggling with the topic a little bit, and he can jump in. So really it's that connection, because you guys need to talk before the meeting. You talk during the meeting, obviously, with the customer. You follow up afterwards, and you develop a strategy for how you're going to move into that account and what you're going to need to do to be successful in it. So it's definitely, it's a very tight relationship between the SE and the rep. But the SE takes, basically all of the technical part of it, with the rep being the sort of the coach. He's the coach and quarterback, and the SE is definitely an integral part of it.
Yeah, I think that's a really important point too, is kind of defining that line between A and SE. Because you work as a team and then you focus on what's, your stronger skill sets are. And then you pass the ball back and forth to ensure that you have that smooth conversation with the customer while giving them the right person to talk to. If they want to talk to licensing, they're going to talk to the account executive. If they want a more technical question to be answered, you're going to be their trusted advisor. And just
Absolutely. And
making sure.
yeah. Yeah, and that's the goal. You want to be that trusted advisor. So they're not just going to talk to you during the meetings. If you're doing it right, they're going to be contacting you outside of those meetings and asking additional questions. And that's when you're hitting the mark. If you don't hear from them after the call and you're constantly reaching out to them, maybe you haven't hit or discovered the pain. Discovery is a huge part of the SE's role during the sales process, is trying to discover the pain, trying to ask the right questions to get them to talk and to reveal things that maybe they didn't want to talk about coming into the meeting because they don't want to air their dirty laundry. But you use that experience that you have, and you try to relate to the customer, and you try to make that connection. And because you'll have technical people in the room and you'll have business people in the room. The rep will try to connect with the business side, and typically the SE connects with the technical side, but not necessarily always.
Yeah, and that kind of brings me to the next question. As a sales engineer, what are the biggest challenges they face?
I think the first thing is, usually when you start a new position as an SE, you've got a lot to learn. When I first walked into my role at HPE, I thought, oh my God, what did I do? I don't know that I'm ever going to learn this stuff. I heard terms I'd never heard before. People were talking about ARR and, just all these different things that I had no idea. I'm sitting there Googling stuff left and right, trying to figure out what's going on. And finally, I just learned, what, if I'm ever going to learn this stuff, I just need to ask. So I'd be in a meeting and somebody, ARR as an example. I remember the first time I heard it, I just kind of raised my hand. I'm like, I'm sorry for the stupid question, but what is ARR? Because it's like one of the most important key indicators that you have as a sales team is your annual recurring revenue. So once I heard that, I was like, okay, now I know where I need to dig in deeper. But when I hit AppD, I really thought I made a big mistake because I had never been a programmer. I had never done anything with application performance. And, I start hearing all of these, coding terms and stuff, and I just thought there's no way I'm going to learn this stuff, but I did. There's really good companies have good enablement, and you work with good teams that will teach you, but that's one of the biggest struggles, is learning the platform. The other thing is what I'm doing right now. I keep saying, you've got to be super aware of your speech, your eye contact, how you communicate with people. That's another thing that challenges a lot of people is, you may have that A-type personality, but a lot of people have bad habits saying, after, the end of every sentence and stuff. So, being self-aware, I think that's another challenge for some people.
Yeah, I definitely see that. Takes a lot of time to be able to communicate effectively without throwing in those filler words such as right?
Yep.
And when it comes into like the sales engineering position as well, a lot of people just assume, well, you just demo the product. And realistically, you're an investigator. You're stepping
Yes.
into the conversation and you're digging in and you're trying to ask the right questions to reveal information from the customer. Because customers, unlike, buying a car, they're going to have a lot of problems and a lot of pain that they might not even recognize. And it's your job to find that pain and figure out how your platform can solve it, because that right there is going to be the key indicator of success. Am
Yeah,
I
totally.
actually helping them? Am I worth their time? Sometimes the client will just step into the call just wanting to see the product, and it can take a good amount of time to actually get them talking, about what they need. And you also have to take that time to qualify a candidate. Is this someone that's really serious about buying the product, or is this someone that just wants to play with it? And it's really that investigative hat you have to throw on.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the worst thing you can do is walk into a meeting with a customer or get on a Zoom call with the customer and start doing um, a pre-canned demo where you've got no point. You're just clicking. It's just, you're just clicking and showing, clicking and showing, clicking and showing. A demo is an opportunity to get to know the customer. It's an opportunity to ask questions. And that demo should be led by the conversation, not pre-prepared when you walk in the door. uh
Exactly.
you start into that demo process, and my the thing I hate to see the most, I hate to see the mouse moving all over the screen while the person's talking. Their mouse is moving all over the place and it's super distracting. um get to a screen, take your hand off the mouse. If you're in person, stand up and walk around. It'll get those people off their laptops that are sitting there doing their email, instead of doing what they, instead of being there, communicating. And ask them, what does this mean to you? Uh, which is not a yes or no answer. That's the other thing. Don't ask yes
Hmm.
and no answers. You ask open-ended questions. You know, what I just showed you, how would you think that would impact you? And that gets people talking, and that will lead you to your next step in your discovery. So, yeah, it's an opportunity to have a discussion, not an opportunity for you just to do show and tell.
Yeah, that's exactly it. It's really part of that sales process is just understanding the customer. And, especially when you're working these larger enterprise deals, these people see demonstrations all day. What they don't see from everybody is, where's the value? Where's this going to help me? And that's what you're selling, even more than selling the product, is you're selling the value behind the product.
Yeah. I mean, if I walk into a car dealership and they've got 40, 50 different models of cars, and I know I'm wanting to buy a truck because I need to tow a boat, and the guy tries to sell me a small passenger vehicle, obviously he's missing the mark. He's going to have to talk to me about what it is I'm looking for, because what he's trying to sell me isn't going to work. And if he's going to sell me a truck, well, he needs to understand that I'm wanting to tow a boat. So he's not going to want to get me a small, two-wheel drive vehicle. I'm probably going to need something bigger with a bigger engine and transmission that has a hitch setup, and he only knows that by asking me the right questions. I might tell him, but I might not. Some people just don't know how to express what it is they want or need. And sometimes when you walk into a company, they don't want to tell you exactly why you're there because, it might be embarrassing for them, or for whatever reason they're not always up front. But if you hit that mark and you get them talking, now you've got a better idea of what you need to concentrate on, especially if you're selling a platform where there's so many components. They may only need a couple of them to start with. Getting in the door with that initial software purchase to meet that need is what's important, and then you can talk about other things, in future meetings.
Yeah, and that's exactly it. And it kind of drives me to the next point there, where you need to be a technical expert for your product, but you don't need to be a generalist. You don't need to know every single thing about it. I think a big step in is, if you're used to selling the Ferraris and, someone comes in wanting to know about trucks, maybe it's sometimes good to bring in that other sales engineer that has that background knowledge to help drive that conversation forward while you're still run the account. It's important with larger platforms to bring the right people in to have the right conversation so the customer actually gets what they need, right?
Yeah. Yeah, you know, especially here at Grafana, we've got a huge platform with a lot of different areas, and it's extremely configurable. You know, because it's an open source project. You know, it started as open source, and we still sell open source, but um, it's so complex that there are areas that not every SE is going to know, and you know, you've got to work as a team with other SEs, maybe even in other regions, to come in and help you with, you know, bring in that subject matter expert, and you know, so that you're putting that best foot forward in front of the customer.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I was working with SAP products, and me being a full stack developer, me working in the modern space before, when it comes to products like SAP, they speak their own language. And if you don't speak their language,
Yeah.
you lose credibility. And so it's very important to have the right people on that call to move
Yeah.
forward.
You don't try to wing it on an SAP call if you're not an SAP guy. That's for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. So when it comes to being a sales engineer, if someone wants to get into this role, what steps should they take to prepare before they talk to a manager? What kind of experience should they gain to make sure that they'll be successful, and they actually are going to provide value for the next company that they go to?
Yeah. You know, like you and I, we both came from a technology background, and that helps. It really does. If I'm interviewing for sales engineers, I will take somebody with that customer background over somebody with a degree any day of the week. Because that you're really, really going to need that. You need to have a certain type of personality too. If you can't look somebody in the eye and have a conversation, somebody that you just don't know, if you're not a person that talks to strangers, you know, it's really that simple. You're not going to succeed well in an SE role. You've got to be outgoing. You've got to be energetic. You've got to be able to look people in the eye and ask them the questions that they need to answer, and be able to deal with tough situations. You've got a customer and he says, you know, I really like what you're showing me here, but Dynatrace does it so much easier. You know, so you've got to be able to come back and be able to have almost a combative conversation with the customer without being combative. You know, you've got to explain why your product is better without slinging mud and making yourself look bad. So, you know, you've got to have those capabilities. Technically, whether you know the product or not, the important thing that I look for is you need to have the ability to learn. So, you know, if you don't have social skills, I can't really teach you that. That's going to
Hmm.
disqualify you pretty much right off the bat. But if you've got social skills and you've got energy, uh, and you've got the technical aptitude to be able to understand new concepts, that scores you pretty high on the list. There was a guy that you and I worked with when we worked together, Yusuf. Um, Whether or not take his name out is up to you, but Yusuf had no sales engineering background, but he came into the interview so strong and so outgoing, and he brought such a level of energy and showed that he had the potential to be able to be technical, that he was almost an instant hire for me. I was very impressed by him, and you know, he's still out there rocking it, and I'd hire
Hmm.
him again in a heartbeat in any position that I was interviewing for. So that's what's really important. Having the degree, it doesn't hurt you. Uh, but you know, like I said, I don't have a degree. I come from, you know, from a military background, but you know, having the ability to learn sales process and the ability to be able to apply the technology with it is super important.
Yeah, and that's the big thing is, you got to treat this like your own business. When you jump into the role, no one's going to be holding your hand. And when you go to a conversation, you have to be ready to lead. You're not going to sit there and wait for someone to call on you. You have to make sure that you're putting your best foot forward and that you're taking the initiative when it comes to your own education. Even though there's an onboarding process, the continued education within the platform and the technologies that surround it, as well as continuing to work on your sales skills, while you're within that role.
Yeah,
So,
it is. There's constant practice. You know, we practice objection handling when a customer, you know, objects to something that you're saying. You know, how do you respond to it? You know, it's one of the more important skills to learn. Uh, you know, how you do your POVs. You know, your proof of values, or proof of concept, some people call it. You know, that's a whole nother realm altogether. I remember the first time I got assigned a POV, I was scared to death, because I was going to have to do all kinds of new technical stuff that I hadn't done in person before. and I was going to, have to do that in front of a customer in real time most of the time. So it was definitely a learning experience. Um, but these are all things that you're taught. Any good company will teach you this stuff when you're coming through. Uh, but it's up to you, like you said, it's up to you to shadow other SEs calls, listen to how they do it. Everybody has a different technique and another method, their own method. You've got to be able to, uh, go and take any sort of enablement that's on your own. There's an area you're not strong in, write it down. I keep a journal. Um, Things that I need
That's
to
good.
keep up with, because you're not going to remember it at the end of the day. If you struggled on a question with the customer, write it down, because you're going to be asked that question again. So that way you've got a chance to go back and study it and be able to practice that answer for the next time it comes around.
Yeah, I mean that's so good to do that, right? It's so easy for us to just, end up blowing it off or not really paying attention to it. Making sure you just have a list. That's such a great idea. Open up Evernote, whatever device that you use, and just create that list and make sure you stay up to date with things that you might be weak on and continue to focus and drive into those.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, with the SE role, I mean, it's a lot of fun, right? So, outside the demos, the type of lifestyle that it brings, it's definitely made for those entrepreneurial minded people, those that are very social and have the technical background. Like you said, those soft skills and the ability to communicate are just so incredibly important, but it's also kind of rare and hard to find within this industry. So is there any additional advice that you'd look to tell SEs to kind of improve their skill sets and continue, with their A game?
One of the things that I always did when I was an SE is at the end of every meeting with the customer, when I walked out or the call ended, I immediately get on a call with the rep and ask two questions. What did I do well? What could I have done better?
Mm,
And then you give that feedback back to the rep as well, because you don't know, you never do a perfect meeting. There's no such thing. There's always something that you can improve on. And that sort of feedback really helps drive you to be a better SE. It also helps thicken your skin up a little bit when you're getting that feedback, especially in the beginning. Because it's such an integral part of the team. It helps you bond with your rep, but gets you better in the process as well. So I think that's like one of the number one things: communication with your rep, having that prep call before every customer meeting and setting the expectations. What are we trying to do in this meeting? What's our goal? And then after the meeting, did we meet our goal? Yes or no? What do we need to do next time? And always document, what are my next steps? You should always be thinking a step ahead. All right, we got this out of this meeting. What's the next meeting? What's our steps? What are we trying to get? Those are super critical parts of an SE's involvement, is being part of that team to determine what's next.
yeah, that's one thing I noticed when I was working with another sales rep. He's actually going to be joining this channel next week. But when I was working with John Zimmerman, we would sit there and before every meeting, what are we covering? What aspects are you covering? After the meeting, we discuss what are wins, losses on this, where can we improve? And then continuously throughout the week, syncing up on the accounts and working together as a team to make sure that this continues to move forward and move forward effectively. And so I'm able to provide my end from the technical side. He provides his end as the quarterback or the team lead, and we work together to make sure that this continues to be a smooth process.
Yeah, absolutely. And sometimes you've got to ask the hard question: is there a deal here at all? Because sometimes they just want to kick the tires. They just want to see what it
Mhm.
looks like, and there's no deal there. And so you've got to sometimes work it out. Do we need to move forward? Do we need to do anything else? Because if there's not a deal, you're not going to waste all of your time and energy on that account at that time. You need to determine whether you've got to, move on to something else. And that's where those, post conversations, do you think there's a deal here? Is there something that's worth going after? Because sometimes there's not. And your time's valuable. And if the last thing you want to do is go into a POV where there's no pain, because it will probably never end. The never ending POV, and you're not showing any value because there's no pain. You're not solving a problem. So, yep.
Yeah, that could be an extensive waste of time, and especially in POVs, can be 4 to 6 weeks long. And
Or
if
longer
during that
sometimes. Yeah.
Yeah, and if you're not identifying pain, you're not providing value to the customer, you're not only wasting time for yourself, but your team and the customer on the end. So it's extremely important, definitely, to qualify those leads and ensure that, this is a good fit. And sometimes it's not. Sometimes they're looking for
Mhm.
something completely different than your product, and that's okay because there's thousands of customers out there, and you need to be focusing on the ones that are going to move forward and the ones that are actually going to gain benefit from you.
Yeah, sometimes either the rep or the SE will get what we call happy ears, where you hear what you think you want to hear and you think there's a deal, and then that's where the conversation between the two, between the rep and the SE kind of works out, because you need to compare notes. Did you hear what I heard? Because sometimes you don't always. And as the SE, you may you may see a technical fit that the rep didn't catch. And it might be an
Mhm.
important technical fit. So that's why you're both there. The sales rep could go into that meeting alone if he or she knows enough about the product that they can talk about it. But you're there for sort of the technical validation. Is what I'm hearing a good use case for something that we can solve a problem with?
Exactly. And also being a good protective guard for the sales reps as well. Sometimes they like to overpromise, and
Oh
it's very
yeah,
important for us to step in and be like, actually, we don't have that capability. But what we can do is send up a follow-up email and see what it looks like in our timeline for engineering and see if this is something that's going to be possible. Because
sure.
it's easy for a lot of sales reps to try to overpromise just to get the deal closed. And we have to pull back sometimes and kind of bring in that reality to make sure that when it does close, we don't end up with that unhappy customer, which down the road doesn't help anybody.
Especially if we're the ones to have to prove it out in a POV.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Was there anything else that you'd like to say to the future sales engineers out there, and any further advice you'd like to pardon or wisdom?
Yeah, if you're an A-type personality, you're social, you like getting out and actually talking to people, not just, messaging on your phone or whatever. And you have genuine technical curiosity. Definitely check out the sales engineering role. There's so much that's positive about it. I think, one of the coolest parts is you get paid a really good salary to begin with. Sales engineers get
Mhm.
paid pretty well. And then you get that commission on top of it. So when you work really hard and you close that big deal, that reward that you get in your bank account at the end of the whatever period they end up paying on, it's like icing on the cake. And there's just nothing cooler than being right at the end of the quarter and all these deals are starting to close and the
Oh, I
adrenaline
love
starts to
that.
kick up because you're seeing all the success of all the people that you work with and the big deals coming in. And your rep drives up, and this happened to me at AppD. Your rep drives up in his new Tesla, you know, a month after you guys close the deal, and then hands you an envelope full of cash, thanking you for all the work that you did helping him close that big deal. But two different reps at AppD did that. I was absolutely stunned. Um, Very classy move, in my opinion. But just the relationships and bonds you build. It's 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 a small community considering how many different organizations are out there. I run into people all the time and cross reference with people from other companies that I worked with on sales teams and have moved companies with people that that were working for those companies. It's just, it's a bond that you build for a long time. And then if you're really successful and you do your job really well, you get to, go to club. It's for the top sales performers. And I've been to club twice. Unfortunately, once was during COVID, so I got, like a travel check, but the other time I got to go to Dubai with me and my wife, spent a week in Dubai doing all kinds of cool stuff, for being part of a high performing sales team. So, you do your work, you get rewarded for it. I could just live fine off of the salary alone, but man, the checks and the commission checks and the potential for, you know, getting club trips and stuff, the rewards are just phenomenal.
Yeah, that was a huge driver for me because I found out when I worked just for a salary, I'd always max out my salary and I would need more, and I'd get 2% raises. This, working salary plus commission plus all the other perks that you get, with sales engineering, you have so much opportunity to grow the amount you earn, and it's really up to you on how well you're going
Yes,
to end up doing, right?
totally. Yeah. Yeah. You want that new car? you either make room in the budget for it if you're working a regular job, or you really bust your butt and get out there and get some sales done and earn that commission check. And then you buy your car, because it's
Mhm.
exactly it. What you put into it is what you get out of it.
Yeah, and that's just it's so encouraging for that. It's like it can constantly be exciting. You always have a new edge, a new sale, something you can be doing to help improve, your monetary game, improve the business, and improve the life for the clients. And it's just amazing that your effort can go so far and impact so many different aspects of your life and everybody else's life, right?
Yeah. And then you move to another company and you end up working with that same customer again with a different product. And they know you because you've worked with them before and you were that trusted advisor, and it just helps you continually grow. So yeah,
Yeah.
I wouldn't leave sales engineering, uh, for it. I mean, I might go to a rep position at some point with some companies since I've kind of done, the sales side before, but I definitely would not leave software sales as a SE or as a rep, as some sort of seller, because it's too dynamic. It's too cool to do something else.
Yeah, I know that the trips to Vegas and the beginning of the year kickoffs, the sales kickoffs. I mean, talk about like going away for a week, having
Yeah.
everything paid for, hotels, flights, food, per diem, and being able just to go out and hang out with some of the best people in the industry. Because when you're in sales, these are social people. They like to have fun. They're very
Yep.
charismatic. They're fun people to hang out with. And so the lifestyle behind it is just, yeah, it's a lot of fun and it's hard to leave. Um, and switching over to like an account executive in sales engineering, if you're considering doing both, right? Which one would you want to choose? And for me, it's like the sales engineering provides a lot more comfort. You're going to retain your job longer. It's a lot of things are going to become
Yep.
fairly routine. You're going to build those technical skill sets and you're going to still grow within there. But when you go to the account executive position, you can earn more money, up to 3, 4 times the amount of money, but it's high risk, high reward. You could be
It
switching jobs
absolutely
every
is.
year.
Yep.
You you can switch into a new job, all excited, got everything that you wanted, and then you get a bad client list. And that bad client list, you're not going to earn any money, and you might even be out of job next year because you couldn't turn that into something, right?
Yeah. Typically a sales engineer has a 70-30 split. 70%, uh, com, 70% salary, 30% commission. Typical rep is doing 50-50. Um, so it's a big difference. And having done that and having to carry a number, which means I had my own quota that I had to meet, I had to do my own PG. So I had to do my own pipeline generation. It's hard. It's really hard. As a sales engineer, you've got to worry about keeping your technical chops up, and you've got that paycheck, you've got that security level. And when you excel and you get the commission, it's icing. With a rep, it's not icing. It's if they don't get the commission, they don't get that full paycheck. So there's a lot more risk involved. But you could get $1 million paycheck as a rep.
Hmm.
I don't know you're ever going to see $1 million check as an SE, but I've seen checks in the 20, 30, $40,000 range too.
Yeah, I was talking to someone, and one of the sales reps over at a previous company I worked at, he earned $1 million a year for 8 years straight being an
Yeah.
account executive.
Yeah. Company I'm at right now, they said that they just wrote one of the reps a $2 million check.
That's just crazy to think about, right?
Yeah, that's a quarter. In a quarter, they wrote him a $2 million check. It's
Man, it's just
nuts.
it's almost like winning the lottery when you get a deal like that in, right? And even on the sales engineering side, I mean, we get some pretty big numbers. Now, it's not going to be a couple $1 million check, but it's still going to be enough to where you'll be celebrating. You're going to
Oh
be able
yeah.
to live very comfortably.
Yeah, definitely.
And before we wrap up here, Scott, can you walk through your career path and what ultimately led you to becoming a sales engineering manager?
Well, I was in the Army for about 11 and a half years, coming right out of high school. So I didn't have a degree. Um, Only took a few college classes along the way. And then when I got out of the Army, I was in aviation. It was a very technical job. And so when I got out of the Army, I was looking for aviation jobs, and I couldn't find one anywhere, because you had to have certain certifications that the military didn't give you. So I was kind of in a spot where I was trying to figure out what I was going to do with my life. And my brother-in-law recommended that I take support position at a computer company. So I did. And it was just supporting like operating systems and stuff on a line of computers for a particular company. And I worked there for about 6 months and ended up being a call mentor. So I listened in on other people's calls and then coached them on how they could, do better with their customers. And was also the guy that took all of the "let me talk to your boss" calls. So that proved interesting, and it was a very stressful job. But from there, it was during the Y2K period, which is kind of dating myself. But jobs were plentiful in the North Texas area. So especially in the telecom corridor up in North Texas, where Nortel and a whole bunch of other tech companies were based out of. So I went from there to another position where I was deploying computers and stuff for Blue Cross Blue Shield of Texas. And then from there, our recruiter said he had a position that he moved to another company and said he had a position that was opening. It was a help desk position for PepsiCo. And I figured, it's an opportunity to get in with the big company. So I went and interviewed, and instead of getting a help desk job, I got a network engineering position because of my background. The network engineering manager was there, which kind of led me into the line of work that I'm in now, because the company PepsiCo didn't have a monitoring team at that point. So they built one. And when they did, they needed somebody who had a networking background. So they brought me on as the network monitoring guy and sent me to school so that I could learn all about, how to monitor with IBM software in Tivoli. And so that began my career in monitoring. I spent about 9 years with PepsiCo doing that, and then moved on to Southwest Airlines. I had a good friend that brought me in over there and was the head of the monitoring team there. So I spent a long time working with HP tools, IBM tools, all sorts of stuff, but HP primarily. And after about, I don't know, 18, 19 years sitting in a cubicle, I got bored. I mean, I got really bored because I've done pretty much everything that I could do. Our HPE rep took us out to lunch, and she had somebody with her that I had never met before. And after lunch, I asked the rep, "Hey, do you guys have any positions open?" Because I was getting bored and I needed something else to do. And she said, "As a matter of fact, the person that was at lunch with us, her name is Martha. She's the sales engineering manager for our team, and she's looking for somebody." And so I didn't know what a sales engineer was. I was like, okay, let's check it out. So anyway, about a month goes by, and I'd been doing interviews and going up to the HP headquarters in Plano and meeting with folks. And they ended up offering me a position as a sales engineer. So I start my career there with HPE, and it just opened up a whole new world to me. I learned what a sales engineer was. I got to, to go and do what a sales engineer does. And there's been no going back. It's been my career ever since that point. And I'm just absolutely thrilled to be in this field. It's so dynamic, and it's just an awesome place to be. So anyway, I went from HPE to a small consulting company out in New York, where we sold all sorts of software products for monitoring, Dynatrace and App Dynamics, and we had our own product line. And so I was meeting with different companies like App Dynamics, as an example, at their conferences in Las Vegas. And that's where I met AppD, sat across the table from them at a dinner, and ended up taking a position over at App Dynamics, where I spent about 5.5 years. That's where I really mastered my craft. Started off as a senior sales engineer, went to a technical team lead, or the team lead for the SE team. And then from there moved to a sales engineering manager for the West Coast for the commercial sector. And then moved, after that 5.5 years, was Zscaler, and spent some time there as a sales specialist. So I went from a SE role to a sales role, where I was sort of an overlay for the sales folks for one of the ZDX products. And then from there, moved over here to Grafana, where I'm a sales engineering manager currently, covering TOLA. And I've got 3 SEs that work for me. So it's been a really decent career, kind of getting up to this point.
Cool. Well, hey, I appreciate your time today. It was a great conversation. Hopefully, this was very helpful to everyone out there. We'll be doing a lot more of these videos. I'm going to bring in different managers from different companies, all sorts of sales reps, and even directors from App Dynamics. So definitely pay attention, and hopefully, we can help you land your next role as a sales engineer.
Awesome. Hey, it was good to see you again, Aaron, and uh, I look forward to seeing your future videos.